Welcome to Wisdom from the Area View, a podcast with two old friends sitting around jawing about stuff. And I use the word old. Why am I using the word old? Because, frankly, we are. But that's the good news. Can you imagine if we weren't getting older? But I wanted to talk today about something that's near and dear to my heart, because it's something that I've been doing for a lot of years, and that's about aging. Why aging? I read something that I want to repeat here because I think it's sort of the preface of where we're going. Age has given me what I was looking for my entire life. It gave me me. It provided the time and experience and failures and triumphs and friends who helped me stepping into the shape that had been waiting for me all my life. I fit into me now mostly. I have an organic life, finally. Not the one that people imagined for me or that try to get me to have on life, but sometimes just a successful life. I have the life I dreamed of. I become the woman I hardly dared imagine I could be. Yeah, aging. We're all aging. That's the good news. So what do we do about that? What happens to our lives as we age? We live in the street view. We're living the life we're living. And yet at the same time, we're getting older and we're seeing things perhaps differently. Are we not?
Oh, for sure. You know, aging to me is fascinating. So when you look at a picture of yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's striking, right? It's striking. But you don't notice it every day. But in order to have gotten from that picture 10 or 20 years ago from today, a lot had to change. And it didn't happen, it most likely didn't happen in a quantum sense, meaning it weren't sudden intermittent jumps. It was pretty much continuous, but you didn't notice it from day to day. Maybe you didn't even notice it from month to month. We probably didn't. So, but all of a sudden, it becomes obvious, right? I think that is fascinating. I'll tell you a really quick story that just happened to me the other day. I was visiting my daughter, and she has a cute little dog, little Labradoodle, cute little guy, and sweet dog. And I was looking at him, and now I think he's about to be 9. And of course, I've known him since he was a puppy, since they first got him when he was like 8 weeks old, whatever. And I looked at his face. Now, his color of his coat is the same, but his face now looks like the face of an old man in a dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is fascinating to see, right? Now, I can't get into his head, and he still does the same things he did when he was a puppy, jumps all over the place, chases balls, does all the things that's not any different. He hasn't really matured. He's just kind of run out of steam a little bit, but he looks different, right? To me, that was so interesting. Aging is fascinating. For the first of all, it's completely unnecessary. So why do I say that? So every cell in our body, except red blood cells, contains DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the software of life. It tells the cells what to do, and every cell has the exact same DNA. So a skin cell or a hair cell or a liver cell or a kidney cell, they all have the same DNA in them, but then it's not all expressed the same. So in other words, imagine a paragraph, and you're only highlighting a single word or a few words on any particular page, right? So that the paragraph is always there, but you're not paying attention to every word. You're just paying attention to specific words at a time. And that's kind of how DNA is. We have what's called the genome, which is what our DNA has all the information in our body. And then there's the phenotype, which is how it's expressed. So cells might have DNA might have the ability to have choice A or choice B, but only choice B is expressed. We only see that visibly, or it's only expressed as a certain protein, whatever. But it's all there. And every cell has the exact same DNA except red blood cells, which don't have any. So the DNA is just software. It could be written anyway. So why do cells die? Well, the telomeres, which are part of the cell, they get old. But that doesn't have to be. The DNA could be written differently so that no cell dies, so that no cell ages. And if the cells don't age, we don't age. We could look exactly the same. There is no reason for us to age. We talked about things that came down from Mount Sinai on the tablets. There's nothing in the universe that says DNA has to be written so that we age. DNA could be written so that no cell ever changes. no cell ever dies, and therefore the organism, us, never changes and never dies. Perfectly reasonable. We just assume that we age and we die, but there's no reason for it, really. In fact, for those many, many physicists who believe that there are an infinite number of universes, it is likely that DNA is different in different universes, that cells don't die, that cells live forever, that organisms don't die. It doesn't have to be that way. And probably in other universes, it probably doesn't exist that way. But in this particular universe, it does. We do age. And to me, that's always been like one of the best clues of why we're here, right? It doesn't have to be this way, yet it is. Why? Because we definitely get smarter. We definitely learn along the way. We've talked about the fact that it would be much more advantageous for the organism to be super smart at the age of 15. So we wouldn't do really stupid things, right? Like jump off of tall objects into water, or, take drugs or drive 100 miles an hour. It would be much better for the organism if we were smart when we were 15 than when we get to be, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. It would make more sense. And yet it's not the way it is. We're smartest, or we know the most closer to the end, assuming we don't have dementia. And maybe even when we have dementia, we don't really understand what happens when people have dementia. Maybe they're still learning. I don't really know. Nobody knows. But the point is, we learn all the way. Okay, so that's also very interesting. So aging, if you stop and think about it, A, it doesn't have to be this way. B, it is this way. C, we get smarter along the way. That's fascinating to think about. Why is that?
So it's interesting too, because there are products all over the marketplace about anti-aging. We want to anti-age. We don't want our skin to be wrinkled, and we don't want to lose our hair, et cetera, et cetera. We want to anti-age. Do we really? What about aging? What about getting smarter, maybe enjoying life more? In fact, they do survey after survey after survey, and people are saying, I'm glad that I'm getting old because I don't worry about things that I used to worry about. I don't care what I say to people anymore. That's a whole nother aspect. But also, I'm having more fun because the demands of life, the pressures of life that were imposed on us when we're younger are no longer there when we're older. Maybe. Then I give a speech. I've been giving this speech for a long time that I call the indignity of aging, because the other side of aging is that those who are aging and not doing as well as those who are aging and doing well. What do I mean by that? There are those who are aging and they're living in poverty. And it's tough to be old and to be poor. Maybe they want to age. Maybe they just want to be over with it. But for the most part, people enjoy aging. They're scared of it. They're scared of that thing that we've been talking about for a long time, you and I, Mark, about death. We're scared of death, even though you're explaining to us how we shouldn't be. And I appreciate that. I keep thinking about that all the time as I lie in bed worrying about death. I keep checking my watch to make sure it's still ticking. And that would mean I'm still ticking. But we are aging. And I just reached a milestone birthday, and I'm proud to tell people my age. So many people don't want to talk about their age. I'm 75. I'm glad that I lived 75 years. I know I'm not going to live 75 more. And I'm in the fourth quarter of this game. But I think it's a good thing that I'm at that age. You're a lot younger than I am, so you don't know what it's like to be 75. But tell me about going this age thing, going from the street view to the aerial view while we're getting older. How does that look, and how should it look, and what should we be doing?
So you brought up one of my favorite topics, and we're going right back to the jukebox of time, right? So first of all, you don't look 75. You certainly don't sound 75 or act 75. I'm not sure what that exactly means, but I think of you as a much younger person. But when I've told you this, when I look at you or listen to you, I am not just seeing you today. I am seeing you in junior high school and high school. I see them all simultaneously, because in the jukebox of time, they all exist simultaneously. All of time is contemporaneous. It is best to think of time as a thing, as an entity, rather than a process. We think of time, time flows. Not really. Time doesn't flow. It looks like it flows. You'd swear it flows like a river. It doesn't flow. It's a big, giant thing. And I like to refer to it as the jukebox of time, because it's easier to get an image of it when each moment of time is a record. And each record of time is playing simultaneously and forever. So here's a little quick analogy just to help people with this. Let's say you had a group of kindergartners, and you line them up side by side, not in a row, not one in front of the other, but side by side. And you start on the left and you say, okay, I want each of you to tell me your name. So the first child says, my name is Anne. The next one says, my name is Juan. My name is Charles, and so on, right? That's one way, one after the other. From the left side all the way to the right side, you go through the 25 kids and you hear 25 names. That's what most of us think of how time works, going from the left to the right, one after the other. So each child saying the name could be like one moment after the next. The other way is to say to the kids, okay, when I count to 3, I want you to all tell me your name. 1, 2, 3, and 25 little tiny, cute, adorable voices belt out their names. You can't probably make out any of them because they're all singing them at the same time, right? That's how time really works, right? It's not one after the other. They're all occurring simultaneously. And you can see that from the aerial view. That's where you get the appreciation of the jukebox of time. So aging takes on a totally different perspective. So I don't look at aging as going from left to right, from young to old. I say, let's go back to the book analogy, another one of my favorite analogies. So if you take a book, you open a book, and if you're reading it for the first time, you probably start on page 1. And you read page after page after page till you get to the end. But let's say you've already read that book and you go, oh, I remember there was a story of that book. There was an episode, an incident that I thought was so fun when the main character was on a beach with her best friend and they ran into another friend and they just had this great time and they just had this wonderful conversation and everybody was happy and the sky was blue and the warm breeze was blowing. It was just a wonderful scene in my mind. I loved it. So you can go right to that scene. You don't have to read from page 1. You go, I remember that was on page 57. You go right to page 57 and there's the scene you loved, right? You can do that in a life. That's the whole point of the aerial view in the jukebox of life. I can say, I choose to see Enid back in 9th grade. So I'm going to just imagine, because I know it's still going on. So I can see you in 9th grade. I can't literally see you, but in my mind, I appreciate Enid in 9th grade the same way I appreciate you today. I just turned to a different page in the book. I didn't have to start on page 1 again. I already knew where you were. I'm going to page 57. That's Enid in 9th grade. Or I want to go back to when Enid was CEO of Meals on Wheels. So I'm going to go back, X number of years. I'm just going to go back to that page in the metaphorical book of life, page 212, right? I don't have to start on page 1 and go back through your whole life. I'm just going to go right to when you were, those 20 years when you were CEO of Meals on Wheels. So that's the way time works. So aging is a little bit of a misnomer. It's another one of life's incredible illusions. Aging is an illusion. Now, people who are listening to this are going to go, here he goes again. My wife here, she'd be rolling her eyes. My kids would be walking out of the room. Even my dog, if he were alive, would have probably just flopped down and just ignored me. But it's true. Aging is an illusion.
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to tell you why. Because I want you to take every day of your 75 years and line them up, right? Just line them up in a row, right? They're all there. Each of those days, all those days that make up your 75 years, right? They're all active and going on. You can pluck one out from when you're 10 just as well as you can pluck one out when you're 50. It doesn't matter. In the jukebox of time, from the aerial view, you can go to any moment. They all exist. So I used to get interested years ago in how people could have prophecies. In the Bible, there's prophecies, there's Nostradamus. And then there are people today who think they can see the future. And I used to say, that's impossible. It's impossible to see the future because it hasn't occurred yet. But when you understand how time works, turns out the future has occurred. It's in that jukebox of time, just like the past and the present. So theoretically now, all of a sudden, I began to realize that, I don't know if it happens or not, but it is not impossible for somebody to see the future. In fact, I have a character in my last book, my novel, Franklin Rock, who could see the future. And I will tell you, many of us do get glimpses of the future. We get, they may be the coincidences we talked about, that you think about somebody and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's them. You have seen the future. You got a glimpse. That's why you thought of that person before the phone rang, right? That's the crazy part about it. You actually got a glimpse of the future. You just didn't realize it. And the reason you could do that is because the future exists. Now, I don't have proof. And there are going to be a lot of scientists and other people out there who are going to listen to me and think I'm just a nut job. I promise you, I am not a nut job. This is the way the world works. It's fascinating. The more you understand it and think about it, the more the light goes on. If all time exists contemporaneously, then theoretically, it is possible to get a glimpse of the future. So I believe that some of those connections we've talked about previously are exactly that. They're little tiny glimpses of the future. I can't tell you why they're happening or how they happen, but this takes us back to aging. It's not the process. It looks like a process, right? We don't look like we did when we were 10 or 20 or 30, right? We don't look the same. I go back and look at pictures. I have a picture on my desk of my wife of my wife and me. I know grandma doesn't count anymore, but I still try.
I do.
So,
Yeah, I was going to correct you, but
right,
you know.
right, my wife and me. Although it doesn't sound as good, by the way. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah,
but
if you
it's more
take,
correct.
It is because you take away the wife and it's me.
It's the object of the, right, whatever.
That's
it is.
right.
Direct object, whatever. Anyway, so I look at her, I look at me, and I go, oh my God, what a difference. And then I have to stop and recognize the fact that that is a snapshot of one of the records in the jukebox of time. So if you took a picture of us next to each other today, we look a lot different, but it's just another snapshot off another record of time. They all exist. So instead of thinking of aging as a process, imagine instead of being on page 25, now you're on page 327 of the book. That's the more correct way to look at it. Now that is super comforting. Why? Because you don't have to lament the fact that you're not as active and healthy as you were when you were 25. You're still 25. You are still 25 in the jukebox of time, right? You're 25, you're 26, you're 27, you're every year. You're all those years simultaneously. You just happen to be on page 327 of the book right now. But you could hop back. If you hop back to page 26, there'd be that young 10-year-old Enid. Mm-hmm. So you see my point?
I do.
So you don't have to lament the fact that you're aging. You're not aging. You're just at a different part of the story. You're on a different page of the novel that makes up your life. That's all.
Well, maybe we're not aging, but maybe we're getting older. Maybe
No,
there's a difference.
no.
No, but we are.
This is very important.
But age, I mean, in terms of number, I'm still not 26 anymore.
No, yes,
so
you are.
Number,
yes, you are 26. That's the point I'm trying to make to you
and
and to
check
everybody
my driver's
listening.
license.
This is such a valuable, important, critical concept.
Well, then
I
keep
don't know.
going, because obviously I'm not getting it. Go ahead.
No, and it's my fault because you're super smart. And if you're not getting it, it's my fault. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is just imagine the book. Let's go back to that book metaphor, right?
Yeah.
You were on page 26, you were 10 years old. On page 50, you were 20 years old. On page 80, you were 25 years old, whatever. Okay. So just like the pages of a book don't disappear, you can go back to those pages. They're still there, right? It's the same thing in here. In the jukebox of time, every moment exists contemporaneously, is alive. You are still 26. You are still 30. You are still 10. You are still yesterday. None of these moments go away. You just are. So the way to look at your life, say, I'm on page 375 of a 500-page book, right? Right? Mm-hmm. You could easily just go back to page 27 and be on that page, right? So you're not aging. You're at a different page. So if you look at your life as one thing, it's not a process. It's a thing. All the days of your life exist contemporaneously. It's it's an entity. It's not a process. That we think it's a process, but it's not a process.
But you know what's interesting? You said, I'm going to catch you on this. You said, just think of that you're on page 365 of a 500-page book. Well, how do you know it's 500 pages?
I tried to make you feel better.
Thanks. Didn't make me feel so good.
You know that great joke? You know this great joke? This is a great sport joke. It's worth taking a time after the sport joke. So these three buddies get together all the time. They're always talking about baseball and having a great time. And one of the guys passes away. So the other two say to him, look, do me a favor. He said, I really want to know if there's baseball in heaven. So whoever of us goes first, the other one has to come back and tell them. So a couple of years go by, and sure enough, one of them passes away, and he comes back to his friend and he said, Joe, I'm back. Well, what is it? Is there baseball in heaven? Well, I got good news and bad news. What's the good news? The good news is there is baseball in heaven. What's the bad news? You're pitching on Friday.
Good. I like that.
Right?
I like that. Yeah.
Right. But that's the point, right? So you were always going to be pitching on Friday. It wasn't a process. You were always going to be pitching on Friday. You didn't know it, but you were always going to be pitching on Friday, right? So instead of you pitching on Friday, I gave you, another 15 years. So whatever.
Well, thank
So,
God.
maybe
Good, because
more,
I have a
hopefully
rotator
more.
cuff injury and I got to practice. Me and
Yeah,
Garrett
you're not
Cole.
pitching on Friday.
No,
But you see the
yeah.
point? The point is,
Yes, I
instead
do.
of looking at your life as aging as a process, and lamenting the fact, because in that concept is some lamentation that, oh, I'm not as young as I used to be. The reason I feel so optimistic now is because I understand, oh, I don't have to lament the fact that I'm not 25. I say I am still 25. In that jukebox of time, that record when I'm 25 is always playing. I am always 25. I am always 26. I am always every age. That's the way it works. So just enjoy page 376, just like you enjoyed page 26. We may not feel as well. I mean, we all have a bunch of things that hurt. You get up in the morning going, oh, that doesn't work. Oops, another part isn't working, right?
Yeah.
But I laugh about it now. I go, oh, this is what happens when you're on page 376. When you're on page 22, you don't have to worry about that. It's not a fact. But now it's a fact. It's okay. It's just another page of my novel. I'm on every page forever, for eternity. So I'm just going to enjoy this page as much as any other page, whether it's a good page or a bad page. It's just one of the pages in my book.
And I love that because I actually feel that way. I don't feel which is why I'm never, ever ashamed or embarrassed to say how old I am, to say my age. Now, of course, I want to say, when somebody asks me, I want to say I'm on page 367. But, and I think you're right. I think it's important. You began the conversation talking about on the cellular level, but do our cells change? Does that DNA ever change? Does the cellular makeup of my body change as I go through that jukebox?
Yes. So things get turned on and turned off, right? So, why did I lose my hair? Well, some damn genes decided out with those in with the new ones, they got turned on, some got turned off. So there's a lot of control of the DNA. DNA doesn't change. There's something called epigenetics, which is something that controls what parts of your DNA are expressed and which aren't expressed. So, but the point is the DNA never changes. That's static, unless there's a mutation, like you get, a mutation occurs. Let's say you're out in the sun too much and you get a mutation in a skin cell and it turns into a melanoma. So yeah, that's how DNA changes, from mutations, either, radiation or chemicals or things like that. That's why we get cancer. So, why do we get cancer? What's cancer? Cancer is the abnormal proliferation of bad cells, right? That take over and push out the good cells. So what causes that? Well, it's a mutation in certain cells, and it's very complicated, obviously, but that's the general idea. But the DNA is, going back, it's written in a specific way, and it doesn't have to be written this way. It could be different. Just like in other universes, gravity. I'll give you an example. So gravity on Jupiter is a lot stronger than gravity on Earth. We couldn't exist on Jupiter. Our cellular function couldn't exist. The gravity would just eliminate the ability of many of the functions we need to live. But if we go to another universe, which is even a whole different concept, gravity could be a whole different concept. Everything could be different. The laws of physics could be different, not just our DNA. But in this, and almost, I would say the majority, I might not be getting this right, but a large number of brilliant physicists from the best places in the world believe that there are, in fact, near an infinite number of universes. Stephen Hawking believed that. He explained how universes could pop in and out of existence. So the fact that we live in this particular universe with these particular laws of physics, with the DNA that we have that causes this, quote, aging, that we change, this is very peculiar to our universe. It's also, to me, another clue of purpose in our lives. I think we've talked about that before. I don't want to diverge from the concept of aging right now. But the point is that it could be different, but it's not. This is the way it is in this universe. And aging is a function of the changing expression of different genes and the function of how they work over time.
But
this is why our hair gets gray and so on.
Right. But let me ask you about aging and purpose. Does our purpose, in fact, change as we go through those records, as we get older, as we age? In other words, do we find that our purpose has changed at all or not? Or should it?
I don't think so. Again, everything that we discuss, I've come to over many years of interrogation, reading, studying, thinking, burned a lot of burn a lot of nights thinking. I think a lot in the shower, a lot of long showers thinking. But it all could be wrong. I mean, I'm a human being. I'm not divine. I think it's accurate. I'm pretty sure it's true. And I was just joking with one of my friends that who doesn't believe anything I say, really close friend of mine. We were just talking the other day. I said, when you die and you get to the next site, you're going to go, God, I can't believe it. Mark was right. And I was joking with it, right? Because I do believe this is correct. And I do believe the evidence points that way. But I'm a humble guy. I could be wrong. But I think to answer your question, I do not believe that the purpose ever changes. I think that the story of life is, to me, so crystal clear about why we're here that I don't think it changes. It's why we're wiser at the end than the beginning, because we're preparing. If we weren't preparing, we'd be wiser way earlier, because for the species survival, it makes a lot of sense to be smart when you're at most risk, like you're a teenager or a young kid, But no, we get wise right to the end. The fact that we are always learning is, to me, a very strong indication of preparation, so that our purpose is preparation for whatever comes next, which, believe me, I think is, as I've told you, I don't know any more than anybody else, but I think we have another job to do. And I think that's why this evolution from selfish to selfless, from inward to outward focus is so critical to achieve. That's what we need to prepare to arrive at, to be prepared for what comes next. I think that's what the story of life teaches us.
Does it take a lifetime to get there?
No, some people get it pretty quickly. And some people like me are slow as molasses, right? So,
I'm going to ask you a personal question, and you can tell me that you're not going to answer me. You can, put me on mute. You have lots of grandchildren. You and I've talked about that. You've got 64 grandchildren. You've been very prolific in your life. No, I think you have 6. Are you talking to when do you start talking to those kids about the aerial view, about changing the perspective of how they're looking at things at their young ages? When do you, Grandpa, start talking to those kids?
I love that question. First of all, I would never mute you ever, ever, ever. But yes, I teach them. I try. When they're young, it's hard. I mean, these are all pretty. The oldest ones are 8, so they're still pretty little. But I do explain things to them. For things about maybe not the aerial view, but understand the power you have to interpret the world the way you want. And so you have complete control of how you feel, right? And you don't have to pitch a fit, and you don't have to get angry. You don't have to get embarrassed. Or things like, when you're embarrassed, just know that there's a million other kids who are embarrassed at exactly this moment about the same thing. So slowly over time, yes, I think it's my responsibility. It's my greatest joy. I'm so, just came back from seeing a couple of them, and it's, I think about that all the time. Okay, what's the appropriate thing to say to help them on the way at the right time? Don't overload them. Don't freak them out. Don't scare them, but give them the tools. And we talked about this. We want to give people the tools to deal with the street view. How do you manage the street view in a way that makes your life more calm, tranquil, less anxious, and so on? And these are all tools that we want to learn. And we want to teach. You and I want to spend time teaching, especially young people, how to do this. And yes, like my grandchildren, absolutely. I think about that all the time. And slowly but surely, that's my goal. And I always say, well, in case I don't get to it, I've got 4 books. They can read about it. But no, I do try to teach them. And I think that's really, again, my responsibility and my great joy. And
maybe a purpose.
Yes, I think, well, of course, that's our purpose, right? Our purpose is to focus on other people. When I tell people now, and you know this, I'm more concerned about you than I am about me. First of all, it's easy because I'm not hopefully not near the end of my life, but, I've had a great life. And if something would happen to me, it's not a tragedy by any stretch, right? So, and I am interested in helping as many people as I can. And not because I'm some, fantastic human being. I'm anything but that's where the joy is. It's, it's selfish. In a way, it's selfish to want to help people, as you know, because it makes you feel great, right? There's nothing that makes you feel better than helping other people.
Yes. It's much more wonderful to give than to receive. There is no question about that. And having said all that, I'm about to give you an out here. Tell everybody where they can write in if they have questions, concerns, thoughts. What's the address?
Yeah, please send us an email with any questions, comments, suggestions, criticisms, anything. Just send an email to question@wisdomfromtheaerialview.com. That's all one word. question@wisdomfromtheaerialview.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Enid, for another great time together.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all soon.
And let's just hope that I'm not pitching on Friday.
You're not pitching on Friday.
Peace. Bye-bye.
Let's hope I'm not either. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.